Hi everyone, welcome to lesson 11. So in this lesson, we're going to be starting to look at variables in lists. So far, everything that we've done, whether it be in the front end of the creation of an app or the back end, has been using variables that have a single value. So for example, you might have a student name and you get that name and there's just one value associated with the within the variable. Now, you can also use lists to be able to allow you to store multiple variables, which is an extremely useful piece of uh, or feature of Flutterflow. Now, an example of where you might use it, which is the example we're going to use today. So let's say we have a student at a school. They have their name that we want, and then we want to collect their contact details and their or contacts for them, which might be their parents, it might be their brother, sister, auntie, uncle, or whatever, which means that there could be many different contact names. So that and all of those contacts are associated with that student. So it makes sense to store them in a list rather than have them as an individual value. Okay, and that's where lists come into their own. Okay, so to go through this example, what I need you to do is create a page similar to what's on the screen. So we'll just quickly go through what is on the screen. So I've just created this page from a blank template, and then what I've done is add a text field for the student name. I've added a row, and the row contains a text field with contact name, and I have an icon button. Now, icon buttons are something we haven't covered previously. Icon buttons are basically the same as a normal button, except that they only display an icon on the front of um, the button, and you can assign actions. Now, if you've got a button like this, what you need to do is you need to be able to change that icon. So normally, I think when you bring an icon button, the default will be an arrow. So if you want to add, we want to add a plus in this case to communicate to the user that the button will add an additional user, we can select a plus from this list. Okay, so once you have that, we also need two other text fields, one for the student, the contact name, and one for the contact phone number. Then we've got a contact list, and we have a container, which we're going to display the list. Okay, and I've also added a save button at the bottom for collecting all of this information. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we need to set up the variables to be able to store the data. Now, as mentioned previously, lists can be used in a Firebase database and they can be used within the app. So for this lesson, we're only going to concentrate on within the front end of the app. Okay, so creating them is the same as creating any other variable. Okay, so for this particular task, I've created three different app states or variables. So we've got a student name, which is a singular value. So it just has a string. We've got a contact name, which could be multiple values. And we've got a contact phone, which also could be multiple values. So when you're setting up this, they're very easy to do. Just put in the name, the string type, and then to turn it into a list, you just need to select this button here to be able to store the information. So once you have all of that set up, then you're ready to start to work on creating your app. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to create, and I do apologize, I've forgotten to take out the actions from the last time I attempted to film this video. Okay, so essentially what we want the user to do here is I want them to be able to click, add some names to and some contacts to this field and click the plus button and then be able to store them in my list. Okay, so to do that is pretty easy. So we're going to add an action. Okay, and the action we're going to add, we're up state management because we've got a list that we want to add to. Okay, and then we want to add our field, so it's much the same as what you've done previously, and we're adding the contact name list. Now with the contact name list, the one slight difference is you do get a few more options of the way that you can update data. And there's a few references to indexes. We'll explain that in the subsequent lesson, what that means. But for this stage, what we want to do is each time that this person fills in the name, we want to add it to that list. So I'm just going to add it to the list, and then we just need to assign the point at which this value is coming from. It's coming from the widget on the screen. So I've assigned that, and then I also need to assign the second variable, which is the contact phone number. It's exactly the same process. So we need to add it to the list, and then we need to tell the flow where it's coming from. So in this case, it's the text field with the contact number. Okay, and once we have that, then we've got our first action. Now the second thing I'm going to do is we want to make sure that this is running really smoothly. So what we want to do is each time we add a contact, we want to make sure we clear these fields. Okay, so once we do that, then what I'll also do is I'll add a second action that we've collected our data, and then we can get rid of any information that was within the fields. So I can do that by clicking widget, update or widget interaction, and there is clear text fields. And in this case, they give you all the text fields that are present. I'm interested in only clearing those two because once a student name is entered, I don't want to erase that. I want to keep that on the screen. Okay, so once we've done that, we've got our little plus button working. Now, if I was to take this to test in the test mode, the problem that I'm going to have is that you wouldn't see anything. All you'd see is I click the button, the text would disappear, and you don't know what's actually happened to the data. So to show the user that the data has actually been stored somewhere, what we want to do is we want to display the data here as the contacts are being added. Okay, so now we're going to set that up. Now to do that, that's why I've got this container here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a row, and the reason I'm adding a row is because I want to add two columns, one for the name, and we want one for the phone number. Okay, so that's all set up. Now we've got our columns. The next thing I want to do is I want to add some way to display that information. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a text field. Okay, so the way you would display an individual information is the same way you would set this up. Okay, and just to make this look a little bit neater too when it's displayed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it some padding. I'm going to make it 10. Okay, for each one of these, so that it's going to display this. Each text is going to be 10 pixels apart and 10 pixels from the screen. Okay, now once we have that, the next thing we need to do is at this point what we've set up is not very useful, because if we've got multiple pieces of text that we want to display, the text box only allows a singular piece of information to be displayed. So we can't. That's not useful. Now, when you're looking at singular widgets that can only display singular pieces of information, what you'll see is there's 5 icons here. Now, if we want to, if we go to one that can display multiple, so column is an example, one that can have multiple things in it, so therefore it can display multiple values. You'll see when I click on that, it gives me an additional icon, and this additional icon is called Generate Dynamic Children. So what that basically means is that we can take whatever's in the column, in this case a text box, and we can generate additional text boxes based on the number of items that we have in our list. Okay, so dynamically that will change depending on the number. So if you add 15 pieces of data to your list, then there's going to be 15 text boxes if we set it up correctly. So basically that's what this dynamic children does. Okay, so to set it up, I've clicked on it, and I'm going to give it the variable name. Always, whenever you're giving a variable, make sure it makes sense. So I'm going to give it the name contact name. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign it to the contact name list. And you'll notice also, and this is a feature you probably mentioned previously in the course, is that when you've got app states that don't have suitable formats for what you're doing, they are not available as a choice. So each one of these are all singular app states that hold one set of data. It's only these two at the end that we've actually got as lists, and lists are what we're interested in. So I'm going to click that. And by the way, if you're doing lists and you only have one value, that's fine too. It means that your app state has the ability to hold multiple data, multiple pieces of data, which could just be one, could be two, could be three, four, etc. Okay, so once you've selected that, the next thing we want to do is in the little arrow here, what we want to do is we want to map the list items. So what that basically means, similar to what we did with the drop-down boxes in previous lessons, is we want to show each one of the values, and that's the setting we need to put in place. And once we have that, we can push confirm and we can save. Okay, now you'll get a warning here telling us that this will generate children dynamic from a specified variable, which is good. That's exactly what we want to have happen, so we can click OK. Okay, and what you'll see now is that the computer generates what potentially it might look like to give you an idea of, when you display your contact lists, how it might look. Okay, so and obviously hello world is not what you're going to see in each one, but we'll deal with that in a second. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing now, and this time we're going to do it for contact number or contact phone. So, okay, I'm going to assign it to a value, and the value I'm going to assign it to is that one. Okay, I'm going to map the data because I want to be able to see the values. Okay, and then we can save it there. The same thing happens. Okay, so we now got our two columns set up, and that's probably what it's going to look like. Now, once we have this, the last thing we need to do to make this all work is it's very similar to what we did with the drop-down list, in that what we've done so far with adding these dynamic children is we've associated our list with this column. But what we haven't done is it's kind of like the analogy we used in the previous lesson. We've essentially plugged in the appliance, but we haven't turned the power on, so we need to do that now. So the last thing we need to do is, with the value here, is we need to tell it, we don't want to display hello world, we want to display the values from our contact list. And because you've associated this, you've associated the contact name item with this, then we can display it there. Okay, so we'll do that one, and then it's the same for this one, except that we'll get a different one, it's contact phone number. Okay, and now that is all set up. Okay, so now what we can do is we can take it to our test, and I'll just run it now. Okay, and what you'll see is that we'll see this working. All right. It's not fast today, but it will get there eventually. Trying again. Here we go. Okay. All right, so let's test it out. So we create a contact name. We might say Peter, And let's say we're going to add, I'm not going to be lazy and just add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I click my plus button. There's our contact name, and then we might have Ralph, and 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Okay, and we can add that. And so now what it's doing is it's displaying all the contact lists, and if we just keep going, we can just keep adding and adding and adding. So we'll add Peter again, and this time we'll add a longer number. Okay, and again, you're seeing that this is giving the user an indication that we have collected these contacts associated with the student name. Okay, so that's all we're going to do in the lesson today. Next lesson, what we'll do is have a look at how we can take this information and write it to a Firebase database. All right, guys, see you in the next one. Cheers.